So one of the things you might be wondering, is, um, the stuff that I do, like natural estate and, where's the Buddhism, I don't know if any of you think that, where's the Buddhism. So I thought I'd give a little kind of snapshot that, so when we talk about the teachings of the Buddha, they're conventionally classified into three collections, or what they call three baskets, the Tripitaka. And I could give you a very simple kind of take on that. So there's basically the sutras, which are stories, basically, about the Buddha's life. And then you have the Vinaya, which is the monastic rules, which happened, and yeah, listen, I don't want to go into detail. You have the monastic rules, like not cutting grass and things like that. And then you have the Abhidharma, which actually appeared, over 200 years after the Buddha passed away. So the Abhidharma is basically a collection of very scholastic, very intelligent presentations, and it's very precisely structured, So basically the Abhidharma is a collection of very precisely structured concepts. And now, where does the Buddha come in then? So the teachings of the Buddha is not simply a collection of concepts. Collections of concepts is what you find typically in other religions. The idea of God, you have the idea of a savior, you have the idea of whatever, the prophet, all so it's not basically, it's the teachings of the Buddha, they're not simply a collection of concepts. They're not a collection of beliefs that you have to adhere to. What are they? They are an aid to developing wisdom. In a way, they're completely useless by themselves. They're just an aid to assist you in developing wisdom. What do I mean by wisdom? To discover the true nature of things. And here's a very important point. Wisdom is personal and experiential. It's not a concept. Wisdom is not a set of beliefs. It's not a collection of reference points. Wisdom is actually experiential. It's discovery in your own being. This is what the teachings of the Buddhas are bringing us to. Do you get this point? This is a really important point. They're to develop wisdom. And the teachings of the Buddhas they continue to develop. Why? Because people, as they follow the teachings of the Buddha, begin to discover the real experiential meaning and not just ideas. I'm just going to do a mute here. Okay, not just ideas. So, moving on to the teachings of the Buddha. You don't mind if I go on another 5 minutes or so. You don't have a choice. You can always switch off. Okay, I won't be offended at all. Okay. So, in the teachings of the Buddha, the Buddha talked about 3 types of suffering. And of course, as you know, the whole focus in Buddhism is not on some kind of God or beings that have to be, heavenly beings or anything like that. The Buddhism is focused on suffering, the elimination of suffering. That's its primary focus. And so when the Buddha talked about suffering, he talked about 3 types of suffering. And very simply, there's first type of suffering is pain, whether that's emotional pain, physical pain. First type of suffering. Second type of suffering is change. When things change, we don't like it. Second type of suffering. And the third type of suffering is very interesting. It's like there's an underlying disease, lack of ease. There's an underlying lack of contentment. And this we experience usually this what am I going to call it? This underlying suffering is hidden from us. It's usually hidden. Why? Because as soon as we experience it, we seek to distract ourselves from it. It's a coping mechanism. What are those coping mechanisms? All the distractions. Right? Shopping. Food. Holidays. There's a huge list. You can make a huge list out of this. So these are all the things that we use to distract ourselves from this fundamental dis-ease, lack of ease, unhappy, miserable. And but when you look at it, particularly after you've had a little taste of these teachings, this is something that Maura told me about, is that all that stuff it just feels so hollow. So hollow, like which team you support, and being depressed when they lose, elevated when they win, it's all so hollow, It has no substance to it. It's like some kind of relief on the surface, whereas underneath there's still this dis-ease, And so the origin, where does this dis-ease come from? You will already have a clue about this, having practiced, you see, because when you practice, you discover that you've been disconnected from your nature. This we need a lot of discussion about, but it's because we're disconnected from our nature, because we're all the time being somewhere else, in some kind of fabricated reality. That's the fundamental cause of this suffering. It's like being separated from your mother as a child. Do you get this analogy? You're separated from your true being. And because you're separated from your true being, there's a lack of contentment until such time as you reconnect with your true being. That is experiential, not theoretical. So, and this is what I was talking about last week as well, is that so what we practice here is becoming familiar with simply being here. With how we actually are. This is not something you do. This isn't some activity. Right? It's simply being there. Not changing, being there. So you'll notice when you sit quietly, it exposes the discontentment. What do I mean by that? I'm sure when you go to sit, you feel, oh God. Do you know what I'm talking about? When you say, oh God, will this be over soon? Oh, why are you putting me through this hell? All this kind of stuff. That's this discontentment exposing itself, right? So what do? You simply acknowledge the discontentment. You know that it's there. You don't try to change it. You allow yourself to feel it, to be aware, to know it. And you sit there just quietly breathing. And as you do so, wisdom is awakened. You start experiencing things as they actually are. And you discover that thoughts are empty. It isn't that you make them empty with some kind of position, some kind of belief. Thoughts are empty. You don't make them empty. Right? So you just basically, so now it's a question of resting, actionless, in knowing, in simply knowing. I'm going to find some bells, okay? Not changing, just knowing, allowing. Knowing when you have uncomfortable thoughts. Not trying to change that, just knowing. Just being present. Then it changes. You're not stuck anywhere. It's always changing. The knowing is constant. So all this time, the landscape of your mind keeps changing. Keeps changing. But you're here. Knowing. Present. Sorry about that. Keeps changing. Do you notice the stillness? You didn't create that stillness. That stillness is the background of everything. When we stop chasing, just simply knowing, and even after the bell goes, if I can make it go, even after the bell goes, this continues. Believe it or not, I'm lost for words. Okay, so anybody who's got prior appointments, better things to do,